Okay, so this is going to be a fun project. Every 16,000 miles, the manual says to check your valve clearance. And I decided I'd make an appointment and have it done. Local shop said they are 3 weeks out, and I'd have to make an appointment, and they'd go from there. They also told me it's up to like $500 and some to do that. Maybe change the plugs, check the clearance, do their little inspection and everything. I was like, 3 weeks out, $500. How hard is this? So I did a little research, looked it up, and it doesn't seem that bad, so I'm gonna give it a shot. I've been into the bike before, just checking it out, doing other maintenance on it, but this is probably the bigger thing I'm gonna undertake, and here we go. So I've disconnected the battery already. Make sure when I pull off any plugs I don't spark them or fry anything out. That was a concern I had. So the red post is off, and we're about to take this all apart. Starting with, gas tank's got to come off. In order to do that, there's a electrical connector here and here. This one I believe runs down to the EMC, which is located right down here, or ECU I guess, maybe engine control unit, engine control module. Hence why I've got this disconnected. I read some things that those have shorted out, so you want to be careful with that. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and disconnect this, pull off this chrome decorative plate here. There's one up front with a couple of bolts. This one pulls right off. There's a screw underneath here. And then there's a couple of electrical connectors right up front here. So I'm going to go ahead and unscrew the tank. There's a bolt here. There's one on the other side. And I'll show you where we're at from there. Okay, so I probably should make this awfully clear. One, I am not a mechanic. I don't work on cars. I don't work on bikes. I'm just a guy that got his first bike and is trying to take care of it without spending an arm and a leg doing so. So anything you see, well, it's just what I've read and gleaned from the internet. And if I do something wrong, maybe you guys will post it in the comments, and hopefully I don't do anything too bad to screw it up too much. So again, disconnected the two screws to lift the gas tank, roll a paper towel under here to lift the tank so I can get to things a little easier for now. When I'm ready, the tank should be able to lift up a little bit and just slide backwards. Underneath here, right up in there, are two little compression rubber gaskets that it sits on. It might be a little hard to see. I'll show you once I get it off. But I pulled this clip off and this clip off. I got a little ring here, old 5-gallon bucket lid that I'm setting all my stuff on. Reusable zip tie, little clip there that you release and it pulls off. That was holding everything nice and neat, wrapped up right in here. So here's the other two that I told you about. These just pinch and squeeze up right in there. Again, connector, pinch, squeeze up. I'm going to show you one other little thing under here. Here's your fuel lines right here, and way in the back there, might be a little hard to see, there's the orange one. Let's see, right in there. I'll show you when I get it off. That orange one is a real challenge. So you have to slide the orange back. When you do, it'll expose two blue little tabs. You have to pinch those tabs together and then slide it off. We'll see how that goes. But I think that I got my wires free. Oh, yeah. Don't forget about these clips. I have just this teeny little screwdriver I use. Put it in there, and it can help pop those clips loose. There's one other hose. It's the overflow breather tube, which is right here. I've got it released here. There's a little screw in the front there for that one that you can release to make it a little easier to get out. But a couple of more clips, and then this will be free. Probably the other thing I should have done, I should have ran this bike yesterday and run most of the gas out of it. I've got a pretty full gas tank, so I'm betting that thing's going to be heavy, but we'll see what happens. So I'll come back once I got the next step of finish disconnecting the breather hose, and then I should be able to disconnect the fuel lines and lift the gas tank off. Okay, that didn't go too bad. Getting the pliers in here to squeeze that and slide it off. I didn't want to squeeze too well. I finally got a big enough pliers in there that had a flat head and was able to pinch it and slide it off. This was a little challenging, and it's probably because I'm not familiar with it. But again, you slide that all the way back like that. It exposes a little blue button on each side. Again, there it's locked. You can't really get to it. There it is, slid off. I actually had to get both hands sort of up under there. You saw I had the gas tank lifted with a roll of paper towel, just lifting it up. And then I was able to use two fingers, one pushing on this side, my other hand pushing on that side. You squeeze it, and then you slide it off. Yeah, garfed up my wrist a little bit on the bottom of the tank trying to get it out of there, but again, once I got the paper towel shoved up a little bit higher, leaned the gas tank up as high as it could go, got one hand on top pushing down, one hand pushing on bottom, and then I just slid it right off, and it came off. Here's the rubber grommets that were holding the gas tank. Once I had everything disconnected, lifted the gas tank up as almost as high as it would go. It tapped, I backed off a little bit, and then it just tapped here, lift up a little bit, and slid the gas tank off. Came right off. It wasn't as heavy or bad as I thought. I mean, yeah, it's only 4 gallons of gas. So now that everything is off, I'll take off this bracket here so I can get in, because it's covering up the plate. So on both sides I got 2 bolts to get this bracket off, lift it off in the front. A couple of more metric hex, slide off this cover, it'll expose the 2 gaskets there. From there, I think we're ready to take off the cover plate. That'll expose little plastic nuts are supposedly in there that you can take off, and then get your 19mm socket in there to be able to turn it over and find your top dead center. So okay, so next step, get the bracket off, get this cover off, get this cover off, and we'll come back after that and see how we did. Okay, so far so good. Couple things about these plastic caps. The timing marks are in here. Here's where the big nut is for a 19mm to get in there to be able to turn it. I've got the biggest screwdriver I could find. It still has a lot of slop. There's a guy on the internet, he said use a pair of channel locks and a quarter. Clamp the quarter, shove the quarter in there, twist it, it works. Another guy said take just a cloth, put it over your screwdriver, shove it in there. It takes up the gap a little bit, and then you can turn it. And that turned it pretty well. This one was a little bit tighter. I didn't have as much play. I was able to just put a screwdriver in there and give it a turn. So both of those loosened up well. I did have a Allen wrench trying to get one of, I don't know which one it was. It was a little bit stuck. So you can put the Allen wrench in there, put any little wrench on it, and then this gives you a little extra torque to be able to get some leverage on there to break it loose. Neat little trick. Somebody showed me that online. So again, I put it in there. I was cranking on it. It wouldn't work. Now where'd my wrench go? There it is. Just put the wrench on there, and it gave me a little extra leverage. Yes, if I was a mechanic or I did this more often, and maybe it's a gift in the future, I'll get some nice good T-handled metric wrenches to be able to get in there and really torque on it if I need to. The other thing is, yes, a bike stand would make this a lot easier on my back. I do have the bike braced up front. You can probably see it on the front tire there, a couple of blocks on each side to prevent the wheel from pivoting. I also have some plastic blocks on the other side to help stabilize the bike, so if I lean on it or push on it, it doesn't roll over the other side. So it is braced up pretty well. I'm gonna get in there, see what we can find, see about these timing marks. I'll get this off, get my wrench on there, and we'll go ahead and take off the cover plates there, see what we find, and go from there. Okay, back so soon. I don't know if you can see in there. There's my Allen wrench, trying to get in there. That little bugger, I was trying to figure out how in the world am I going to get that out. Well, right here, if you part these two hoses, you can get it in there with the wrench. But that only leaves me that much sticking out, and yeah, that is on there pretty good. So the little trick I showed you before, grab that, there it broke loose. It's easier if I got two hands to do that, but I'm gonna try to sneak that in there again. Yep, it's loose, so I can get that out. I'm assuming I'm gonna have to do the same thing on this side, and there it is. So I'll be coming down from the top there, and I'll probably have to use just a little wrench to help break that loose. But thought I'd take a break and show you that. Okay, so I ran into another little issue here trying to get these covers off. Let's see, right here, this would be your throttle sensor. Looked up what that was, and as you can see, my wrench and that are in the way. So I probably could do it without taking it off, but I don't want to whack that thing and slip. So I'm just going to take that off and get that out of the way. Flip that up there. Now I can go ahead and try to get that off, and we'll go from there. So I've got 1, 2, 4 left, and we'll see what it looks like when that's all done. So another little trick that I read online was getting these covers off can be a little challenging. One guy showed bumping it with a piece of plastic. I noticed a little ledge right there, and with just a slight twist it popped up. Same thing, put my screwdriver under there, gave it a slight twist, it popped up. There is a rubber gasket under there, silicone gasket, so be careful that when you pop it off you don't slide or rub that gasket. For me, I was able to gently lift it and the gasket came with it. The other one, the gasket came up and it stuck. I'll show you that again once I take this off and set it on the ground. Another little trick. Since you are going to be rotating the engine, now is a good time to replace the spark plugs. At least check them. So there's one on each side, of course. This just pulled off. I've already loosened that. There's the spark plug. I've got a 16mm deep well socket. Shove that down in there, and they just screw out nice and neat. Spark plugs. Owner's manual said check condition and replace every 8,000 miles. Or once a year, replace your plugs. Mine looked really good, and I've got 16,000 miles on the plugs. I mean, they were beautiful. They were white still, nice and clean. The gap for those plugs, I pulled it up here on my phone. I don't know if you guys can see that. I'll try to make it clearer later. But it was 0.8 millimeters or 0.9 millimeters, which equates to 0.031 or to 0.035 inches. The valve clearance, again, I'll try to post this in the comments or the section down below. Valve clearance for the intake was 0.08 millimeters to 0.012 millimeters for the intake. The exhaust was 0.22 millimeters all the way up to 0.26 millimeters. Pretty thin clearance. If you don't know which is exhaust and which is air intake, well, there's the air filter. Here's the air intake. Here's the air intake. So air intake, air intake. This side then would be the exhaust, and this side would be the exhaust. I'm primarily working on the back cylinder first. It looks like it's going to be a little more of a pain to get into it, so I'm going to do that one first while I'm fresh. Check the clearance on that. Down here I've got 19 millimeter. Again, somebody gave me a little tip on your socket. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I've put a black mark right there. Also the 19 lined it up so I can keep track of when I'm rotating it, how far I've rotated it, and make it nice and easy. Obviously your wrench will show that, but as you rotate the engine after the compression stroke, it sort of drops real quick, and you know, a ratchet's going to spin freely. So the idea was that you would be able to see that black mark or keep track of where the numbers were and know how far it rotated and how much further you have to go. I'm going to get the last spark plug out, and then we'll try to get in here and show you the timing marks and see what we see. All right. Okay, so I've got everything ripped apart. I initially had not planned to take off the front covers here, but then I was trying to figure out, okay, where is top dead center? Because these are supposed to be adjusted to top dead center. And it tells you that when you look in this little hole, the service manual that is, tells you, when you look in that little hole, you're going to see a little groove stamped into the metal. So as you turn it, all of a sudden that little groove is going to come through. And if you see that little groove right there on the threads, the groove lined up inside is supposed to line up with that groove, and that's how you know you're at top dead center. Well, that's fine and dandy, but what they didn't tell you is, when you're looking in there, there are actually several grooves. So this one, and you rotate it counterclockwise a little bit further, and you end up seeing that one followed by two. So I'm like, well, which one's which? The service manual talked first about adjusting your front piston and setting these first, and then it said rotate counterclockwise 300 degrees and watch when this stays at the top, line it up. You're going to end up approximately right around a 300 degree rotation, and you will line up another. Well, it didn't say another, it said you will line up the hash mark again. I'm like, well, it can't be the same hash mark, so obviously that's why there's two. So now, which one's front, which one's back? Nothing I found tells you which one's front, which one's back. So cheater method. I rotated it and watched and got myself a big old fat screwdriver and lined it up with the piston hole here, or spark plug hole, set it in there, and that is all the way at the top. And as you rotate, you will see it go up and down, up and down. Be very careful not to have the screwdriver slanted. If it is, you're going to get it stuck in there and you're going to mar up your piston head. So be very careful. It almost takes two people to do this. But there's my top dead center. That was the highest the screwdriver came Also, you can just barely. Piece of dog hair, not good. You can see these are loose. They're not under pressure. Both sides are loose here. You wiggle them, you can just barely hear them tapping. This, on the other hand, very solid, does not move. So I'm assuming right now I'm lined up on that hash mark. Again, that little hole, groove on the side, stamp on the metal is lined up with this. I am lined up on this one when looking in there. That took a little bit to figure out, but it appears to line up very nicely with top dead center on the front piston. I'm gonna go back and double check this, but it seemed like that one lined up with top dead center on the back. So now let's check the gap. Okay, so just trying to get a little better angle here, show this. Intake is supposed to be between 0.08 millimeters and 0.12 millimeters. I don't have 0.08, but what I do have is 0.051 and 0.038. Put them together, you got 0.089. So I'm going to use that as my minimum. 1.27 should be just a little too fat. It should not fit. So if I can get this one in and this one I can't, I'm going to call life good. So on the back one here, it slides under and it goes in pretty easily. A little tension, not much. I'm going to try this guy here, the 0.127. I can just get the tip in. Even if I come in from like the side, it just, nope, it's not going to go in there, which is a good thing. That's what we want, because that 0.127 is just a little too fat, whereas this one is the minimum we want. And that slides in very nice. It goes all the way in, no problem. Checking the front one here, or the one closest to me. Man, that's tight. I can't get that in. Just out of curiosity, I'm just going to try the 0.5. See if that goes in. And it does. So we got to loosen that up just a little bit. And in order to do that, obviously I can't do that yet. I got to get a wrench on here, loosen that jam nut, give it just the slightest bit turn counterclockwise to open the gap a little bit, and then put that jam nut back on. So we'll give it a shot and see what happens. Okay, that was a game of wiggling it back and forth. 12mm wrench. Put it on there, held the Allen wrench, gave it a torque. Even just loosening it, I felt the Allen wrench shift a little bit, so I thought, you know what, let me just try that. And sure enough, that was it. This is 0.8. Trying to line it up, get it in there. Maybe I'll come in from the side. And yeah, nice clearance. Slides real easy. Here's 0.127, just a tad bit too thick. And nope. Really can't get it in there. Yep, not going in. So, I don't know. I'm going to call that good. See what happens. It seems better than what it was. And let's go to the exhaust side. Okay, so on the front, it's really amazing how much bigger the gap is. I'm at 229 here, that's 0.229, which is just a smidge bigger than the minimum, and trying to get that under there. Well, come on. There it goes. And there it goes. It fits underneath. And I can tell you I tried 0.269 did not fit. So I'm within tolerance. These are both snugged back down nice and tight. Man, it was a game of back and forth. Tighten it, recheck it, tighten it, recheck it. But I think we got it. So, onto the rear cylinder now. Okay, so a breaker bar is definitely in my future. Every time I kept rotating this, trying to land on the timing mark, I missed it. It would flip over and shoot right past it, and then I'd have to go all the way around again trying to find it. So, I mean, definitely a ratchet wrench, not the way to go, because it just slips and you can't hang on to it well enough. I finally got it, but it was way harder than it should have been. Just to know when you're getting close. See if I can't get in a little tighter here. Right now, they're both up. I've checked my clearance on both my intake and my exhaust. It works. There's a little bit of clearance. You can see them wiggle just a little bit. One of the ways that I made sure I was there, besides the timing mark, was as I rotated it. You can see it just fell over now. And that exhaust is going to open. And then it closes, and I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but the air intake side is now opening. And then it's going to come up, and it closes. And now I was watching for my timing marks coming around, and inevitably what would happen is I'd be watching, trying to hit it. I feel the compression coming on, getting there close, and up, there it goes. I just fell past it. So that was the challenge. Now I think I'm going to go back to put it all together. A couple of things I did note, and I didn't mention it earlier, was that gasket that goes around there. There's these little notches. I made sure I lined my gasket back up so that I didn't put new grooves in it, obviously creating new gaps or anything. So that was one thing to be aware of. As I was taking the screws out of this, it dawned on me, leave the spark plug in a little bit. The last thing you want to do is drop one of the little screws for that all the way down right into your spark plug hole. So before I go to put all this back on, I'm going to wipe it all down, make sure it's nice and clean. I'm going to put the spark plugs in so I don't accidentally drop something down that spark plug and have to go with a whole new project. So I'll let you know how that goes as soon as it's done. So I've got the covers back on, I've got the bracket back on, putting the front decorative chrome back on, and notice something here. The bolts all have a little blue Loctite. I'm assuming that's because it's plastic and you don't want to bear down on that too hard, unlike everything else, which is torqued. So I thought I'd just point that out. Get a little blue Loctite. Red's the stronger one, blue's the lighter one. I'm assuming you don't want red on that. And just put a little dab on there before you put those back. Okay, well, it looks like I got everything back together. I'm about to put the gas tank back on. My concerns with that are getting this hose on there. What I'm going to try to do is just squeeze this with a pair of pliers and slide it on without bringing the clamp back. Just leave it where it is. Squeeze it, slide the hose on, see what happens. I'm assuming this is going to go on a lot better than it came off. I've got it, the orange pushed out, so it should just slide on, lock in, and then slide the orange back, and it should clip in nice and tight. Make sure I put the breather hose back down through there correctly, connect up my wires. Here's where I had the gas tank, just sitting on a bucket so I didn't smack anything on the fuel pump. This, actually, there's a bracket underneath there that this wire runs through, so don't forget to loop it through that just so you don't crush it. Other than that, okay, we're gonna do it, see how it goes. Okay, so there's that orange little clip. I slid it on, I heard it click, I thought it was all the way on, gave it a little tug and it popped right off. So make sure you get that pushed all the way on and then slide the orange back, in this case to the left, locking it in place. When I first put it on, I did not have it all the way on and gave it a little tug to see how firm it was and popped right off. So do that. And then up in there, I don't know if you can see it, but there is that little clamp I was telling you about, that little thin metal that just holds this cable up out of the way so it doesn't get squished. So before I button this down, I thought I'd show you one little thing. Trying to get that on was a little bit of a challenge. What I ended up doing was rotating the gas tank. I've got my little roll of paper towel here as a cushion. So I rotated it, pushing it and giving myself a little more clearance, and I was able to lift up, get my left hand in here, shove it on while squeezing it on, and that seemed to work just fine. But it did take rotating the gas tank a little bit and a little finagling, but not too bad. Well, there she is. Everything seems to be running fine. I'm going to take her out for a test ride and see how she sounds once she warms up. The reason I started this project was I heard a clicking noise. I thought it might have been something was a little loose in there, and hey, we'll see what she sounds like. Thanks for watching.